Today, we're talking about how do we describe what we do as actuaries? Family and friends have probably asked you, what do you do? And maybe colleagues or prospective business partners have asked, what do actuaries do? But how do you answer that question? Do you have a clear answer or do you fumble through a response? Joining us for this discussion is experienced actuary, motor pricing manager, and author Catrin Townsend. Catrin says that having a clear definition of what you do can help increase your value and recognition at work. And it can also bring numerous personal benefits like greater motivation and meaning to your work. Today, she'll share her tips with you about how to describe what you do as an actuary. Catrin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Julia. Thank you for having me.
So, Catrin, you and I first met, I think, on LinkedIn back in 2022, shortly after you'd published your book called A Risky Business, An Actuary's Guide to Quantifying and Managing Risk in Society. Yes. And then we've recently reconnected as I've published my book too, Aspiring Actuarial Leaders, the Modern Managers Toolkit. And even though we're on opposite sides of the world, I'm here in Australia and you're in the UK. But we've bonded over our common experience as actuaries and as authors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually read your book a couple of weeks ago and I loved it. It was super practical and highly recommend if anyone is
Oh,
watching this who hasn't read it, like get on that now.
thank you so much. And yours has done so well. Yours has been out for a couple of years now, and available in lots of different places as well. So we'll link to that in the show notes too. But Katrin, compared to being an actuary, don't you think that being an author is so much easier to explain to people?
Definitely. Yeah. When you say you're an author, everyone immediately gets it. I mean, most
Mm,
people think you've written a fiction book.
that's true.
So yeah, so I think a lot of people are disappointed that I haven't written, some kind of fan fiction about like pirates or something, I don't know. But when you say you're an actuary, everyone suddenly wants to talk about your book
About your
again.
book. Yeah.
Yeah, being an actuary is quite unknown as a
Mm,
profession. You
mm.
know, there's no actuary Barbie. It's not something that kids grow up knowing, oh,
Right.
that's something I could do, or I know what that does. And I think most adults don't really know what actuaries do either. Um, and I think that means that the profession has a real kind of image problem, but
Mm,
also it also means that your role day to day in a business can be very different. Like the actuarial profession is so diverse, and I cover that in my book. I literally have
mm,
19 chapters, and each of them covers a different thing that actuaries can do. And so,
mm.
because of that diversity as well, even if someone knows what an actuary does, they might not know what you as an actuary do. And I think
Right.
that's the other difficulty we have.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So without a tangible output like authors have in a book, we don't really have the same kind of tangible outputs that you can point to and say, oh, we're actuaries, this is what we do. And we do so many different things. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you and hearing how you describe what you do and also helping other actuaries describe what they do too. But before we get into that, I want to ask you the question I ask all of my guests, Katrin, and it's this. How do you use your actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world?
I I think my actuarial superpower is synthesizing data and quantitative analysis and turning that into something that's really actionable,
Hmm.
uh, and something also that non-technical people can understand.
Mm.
And so hopefully that means that my stakeholders in the business can make informed data-led decisions.
Hmm.
But I also hope that people start getting excited about insurance pricing, get excited
Excited.
about actuarial science, and also get excited about the benefits that a strong pricing team can bring. And that's definitely something I want to focus on in future.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I love that. So, so you've talked a little bit about, what you do and the specific niche of actuarial work that you're in. Why do you think, more broadly, why is it important to be able to describe what we do as actuaries?
Yeah. Well, we've all had that, you already said, we've all had that awkward moment haven't we? When you're at a
Mm.
party and someone turns to you and says, "What do you do?" You desperately wish you were a dentist or something at that point, don't you? But I think all actuaries hate that question
Mm.
because you might say I'm an actuary, and then people are either confused or
Mm.
they're immediately bored.
Mm.
And I once had a very confusing conversation. And I said I was an actuary, and they said, "Oh, have I seen you in anything?" Uh, and it took me a moment to realize that they had thought I was an actress. And so I replied it was very unlikely, made a mental note never to say I was an actuary at a party
Mm.
ever again.
Mm. Right.
Um, but aside from those awkward small talk moments,
Mm.
the low recognition of the actuarial profession means that it's really hard, or certainly a lot harder than it needs to be,
Yeah.
to get amazing people into the profession because they just don't know it's an option for them.
Mm. Mm.
And I know for me myself, in high school, I loved maths. I
Mm.
loved problem solving and practical maths in particular. And I had never even heard of being an actuary. It had never crossed my mind. So I very, very almost wasn't an actuary.
Mm.
I almost went for like quantum physics or something, although I should definitely not be there anywhere near a Bunsen burner. So probably a good thing. Um, but defining a work is also really important within your work circle. So even for
Mm.
people who do know what actuaries do,
Mm.
like your boss or maybe even your boss's boss
Mm.
might say, "Oh, what are you working on right now?"
Mm. Mm.
And having a clear, concise answer to that is really going to increase their recognition of your work and therefore increase their recognition of the value that you add to the
Mm.
business.
Mm.
And I think there are other benefits too. If you're able to clearly define your core mission, then it makes it so much easier to prioritize your tasks. So just super practical. But for every activity in the morning, you come in, you've got a massive to-do list. You could just look through those lists and say, does it actually help me achieve
Mm.
this mission statement, what I say I do all day?
Mm.
Because if it only tangentially aligns, then maybe it can be delegated or delayed or even dropped.
Dropped.
Fingers
Mm.
crossed. Yeah, dropped. Love dropped. Leaving because then it leaves you to focus on the truly value add work that only you can do, or that you have your special skills to do.
Mm. Mm.
And I find for me personally as well that having a mission statement, we're going to call it that, it's a really great source of motivation
Mm.
because you might have several people in your team at work who all do the same thing as you, or they all do a variation on the theme. Maybe one of you does it for home and one of you does it for motor, or maybe you're all a team of reserving actuaries.
Mm. Mm.
And why are you there? Why are
Mm.
you there? You
Mm.
know, what is your superpower to use
Mm.
to use your word, Julia?
Mm. Mm.
What special thing do you bring
Mm.
that enhances the business?
Mm.
So I think defining your work can really bring that recognition. It can bring focus, it can bring a bit of meaning.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want that?
Absolutely. I mean, listening to you describing why this is important, it's not just about having an answer at a barbecue. It's not about just having an answer when someone says, "What do you do?" There's actually a whole lot of benefits to having a great answer, ranging from, as you've described, getting recognition at work, being able to make sure that other people know what you do, not just I'm an actuary, but what value do I add to the business? And then from a personal perspective as well, being able to use that to help prioritize your work. And so many of us are just feeling completely overwhelmed with our to-do lists in 2025. So having a way to kind of triage that to-do list and to be able to decide what's important, that's really powerful. And then the idea of motivation and meaning, I love that too. I think those are such important benefits of being able to describe what we do and maybe not ones that we've really thought about. Mm. So, okay, so we've talked about why it's important to be able to describe what you do as an actuary, but how do you do that, Catrin?
I would summarize my job and say I create and deliver statistically strong motor risk models that meet stakeholder needs. So let's break that down word by word and
Yeah,
talk about what
yep.
that means. So I create. So that means I'm not like a short order cook and I'm just coding up the models that the
Mm,
trading team prescribe.
mm,
I'm actively decision making.
mm,
I'm creating new features and models. There
mm.
is a creative process to this, you know.
Yes.
Um, I deliver. So there's an element of project management
Mm,
of the deployment of those pricing models,
mm,
but also what I create has to be actionable and it has to deliver business value.
mm.
And I actually think that this is one of the places where actuaries are very different to data scientists sometimes. You know,
Ah.
data scientists can sometimes create a really great solution,
Mm-hmm.
great, you know, gold star, you got the best solution. But
Yep.
actually, it's really not it's not implementable because of regulatory
Yeah.
concerns or because the stakeholders are not going to go for that. So what
Right.
you need to create something really actionable and
Mm,
deliver that business value and pragmatism, right,
mm.
is a real strength you need. You can't spend an extra 4 weeks on a model if it's only going to give you a tiny, tiny bit of benefit. You just got to get it out there in the wild for you to
Yeah.
get the
You got to
money in your
deliver.
pocket.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to deliver. So that's I create and deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And what am I creating and delivering? I'm creating and delivering statistically strong models, risk models.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to stay up to date on
Mm-hmm.
new statistical methods and their weaknesses. So there's always that continuous development there.
Mm.
But also, this actually really suits my academic background. I've got a master's in statistical modeling. And so this is one of those places where I can say, yeah, I'm actually, this is really well suited to this. And this is the
Yeah.
value I bring. I
Yeah.
bring that really kind of academic rigor,
Mm.
statistic, and that statistical view to the models.
Mm. Mm.
And I'm focused on motor as well. So I need some level of product knowledge
Mm.
related to cars
Mm-hmm.
and their risk levels. So I'm going to need to regularly invest some time in keeping those skills up to date,
Yeah.
which means that it's not a waste of my time to spend half an hour reading a car magazine every month. That's actually really valuable, you
Is
know, and I
it?
highly recommend that. Yeah, I think
Interesting.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because I mean, with my new hat as head of lifelong learning here at the Actuaries Institute, I'm really very conscious about how do we make our decisions around ongoing CPD, lifelong learning. What do we need to do to stay up to date and relevant as actuaries? But, what you've talked about just now, reading car magazines as a motor pricing manager makes total sense. And so by being really clear about what you do, that also helps inform your lifelong learning and CPD program. What's going to be best suited to you to keep your knowledge and skills up to date. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And and it's not just about kind of me and my team either. The
Mm.
models that we create have to be able to meet the needs of my stakeholders.
Right.
So even if you have the best ever statistical model, the
Mm.
best ever, you know, it's not gonna cut the mustard if it doesn't work for the stakeholders, you know, if it
Yeah.
doesn't actually deliver business value.
Mm. Mm.
Um, for me, my stakeholders are the optimization pricing team and the
Mhm.
trading team in particular, the underwriting team. So I can't hide away in a darkened room
Mm.
cranking out complex models. I
Mm.
know that's probably, you know, some people are thinking, oh, I thought that's what actors do. No, but we can't do that.
No.
I have to be collaborative. I have to be people orientated. I
Mm.
have to spend the time investing in that relationship with my stakeholders so I know what they want. Because if I don't know what they want, then how am I going to meet their needs?
Yeah.
So that's what I do. And of course, I don't do all of these things all of the time. You know, I might have days or weeks when I'm not modeling, for example. I might not be modeling, I might be much more focused on data preparation
Mhm.
or deployment. But at the core, this is still what I do.
Yeah.
And I I think also it helps us to be kind to ourselves. If you have an afternoon where you're just not, you're overwhelmed, you're not getting anywhere, and you think, oh, I'm being so unproductive. What am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
We
it
have
really
those
helps to
days.
take that. I think everyone has those days.
Yeah.
And actually just to be able to embrace that and say, but over this past month, this is what I do, and all
Mm.
of this, whether it's going for coffee with a stakeholder, or spending time in those meetings, reading a car magazine, um, helping my team understand how we do modeling.
Yeah.
It really helps me to say, actually, it's not wasted time. It's
Yeah.
it's a really good investment of what I do, and I think by listing it out like this as well, I mean, hopefully already you can see that I have some of the skills that I need to do my job, and some of
Absolutely.
those attributes to be successful, and that's why I'm doing this
Mm.
role, and
Mm.
this is what I'm adding.
Mm. Mm. So there's benefits to you personally because it helps you work out what you're doing, and it also helps inform your lifelong learning. It helps you stay relevant for the business as well. And also, I think what's really interesting about your mission statement, if that's how you describe it, I create and deliver statistically strong motor risk models that meet stakeholder needs. That encapsulates what you do without using the word actuary. And I think that's really powerful because sometimes when we say I'm an actuary, we get those sort of blank looks. But when you break it down and are specific about what that means and what that looks like and who you're doing that for, that makes it much more accessible as an explanation to a lot of people. Hmm.
And the follow-up question that you get then is, oh wow, what does that model look like? And
Ah, yeah.
that's a great question, because a
Yeah.
model looks very different depending on what job you do. An engineer might have a model that's made of little matchsticks or whatever. Maybe if you work
Mm.
in a fashion
Mm.
or something, a model is something very different.
Mm.
But I think it's one of those things that really opens up the conversation. What does that look like? Help me
Yeah.
visualize your day. What do
Yeah.
you do when you say build a model? And it just opens up a lot of conversations instead of making people feel go, how do you even make that a verb? How do you even
Mm.
actuary?
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So far outside my world, I can't even, start to imagine. I guess, and back to our author analogy, it's a bit like saying I'm an author, and then they might say, "Oh, what's your book about?" So it's sort of, yeah, gives you that sort of open for more questions and more discussion without just sort of going, "Oh, you're an actuary, all right, I'll go and talk to the next person because I don't know what that is." Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. So that's how you describe how what you do. For our listeners, I'd love for them to have a bit of a process around working out and formulating a similar sort of mission statement for themselves. So, can you take us through the process that would help other actuaries describe what they do?
I would start by looking at your calendar. Just at a glance,
Yeah.
just how are you spending your time? Just past 2 weeks as an example is
Hmm.
fine. So you look at your calendar and you think, oh, I spent about a third of my time in stakeholder meetings. And I
Mm.
actually love color coding my calendar for this reason. So I've got one color for stakeholder meetings in my calendar, for
Okay.
example. So it's really easy at a glance to see this. And
Mm.
I spend some time doing data checks, reviewing the models that my team make, motor risk models. I spend some time preparing for an upcoming deployment, speaking to the different various teams, making sure they know what they're doing.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, I spend a good few hours a week in team one-to-ones, team meetings, upskilling the people in my team so the
Yeah.
models that they build are better as
Yeah.
well. So, have you got a list of activities that you do? I mean, we could use you as an example.
Mm. Mm.
You know, so once you've got your list of activities, I would try and join those together to just one or two main themes.
Mm.
So I looked at my activities and I thought my two themes are probably statistical models and stakeholders. So almost everything I do falls into one of those two categories.
Mm.
So let's start with something like I build statistical models for stakeholders.
Hmm.
That's that seems reasonable.
Yep. That's what you're doing.
um,
That's what your calendar's saying that
that's
you
what we're doing.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So
Yeah.
let's keep it simple. So I
Yeah.
build statistical models for my stakeholders. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I like to iterate that by being a little bit silly and going to extremes and saying, okay, so if I built exactly the model that the underwriter wanted, is that a good outcome?
Mm-hmm.
Well, probably up. But what if the model that the underwriter wanted is so overfit that,
Mm-hmm.
you put it on new data and it's absolutely shot? Is that a good
Mm-hmm.
outcome? No, of course not.
Mm-hmm.
I want to build statistically strong risk models.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Am I responsible for keeping up with trends in the commercial property insurance market?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, because I build motor models. So I probably should add something about motor
Yep.
into my mission statement. And you can do this a few times to try and think really what are your parameters?
Mm.
What are the actual deliverables that you need? And but you can be a bit more specific with that.
Yeah.
And another prompt I like is, ask yourself, if I didn't do this task, so look in your calendar and you think, oh, I don't know quite where that task fits.
Mm.
Is that, superfluous to my job? And
Mm.
you think, well, if I didn't do it, how does that affect the business? So
Mm.
if I didn't do the deployment preparation, well, the models might be great statistically strong risk models that everyone loves,
Mm.
stakeholders want, but if they're sitting on my desktop, they're not worth a damn penny.
Mm.
So, and then you start to see how important your contribution is.
Yep. Yep. And I guess helps you narrow down those activities or those things that find their way into your calendar about, you know, is this in line with my objective? Is this in line with what I do? Is this valuable, or should I maybe think about dropping it? Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
It's
we've all
really
got tasks like that, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I tend to collect a lot of extra tasks because I find a lot of different things interesting. But I have also found having a mission statement has been really helpful. And that's evolved over time too. I think that's the thing, like our what we do in our roles won't always be the same throughout our careers for most of us. And so I think also that sort of periodic review of what you're doing, that can also help just to make sure that that mission statement stays up to date. So when I first started Guardian Actuarial, I was doing a lot of actuarial consulting work in the government space, health and human services space. So my mission statement at that point was I help senior leaders use their data to solve complex people-oriented problems. And there were problems around workforce or around the communities that they were serving. And so reminding myself, like you have with your stakeholders, who was I serving and what was I doing with, how was I helping them? That was helpful to keep me on track. But that's kind of evolved now that I'm in the leadership and coaching space. And I'd say my mission statement is I help actuaries build communication and leadership skills to have great actuarial careers. So again, it's sort of, who am I helping? And that helps me refine, okay, well, if a request comes into my calendar, and you're not kind of, that's not necessarily directly aligned with my mission or my objective, then I maybe need to give that some extra thought about whether I've got space for that. Helps me stay focused as well.
Yeah. And I think that, once you've got it, write it on a post-it note or the front
Yeah,
of your notebook,
yeah.
or somewhere where you're going to see it often.
Mm,
And yeah, use it to prioritize those tasks. This
mm,
request comes in and they want you to do some kind of workshop around communication that is not related to
yeah,
careers for some reason.
yeah.
Maybe you don't do that. Or use it, like you said, on those days when you're feeling so overwhelmed
Yeah.
and or you need motivation that day and you're thinking, oh, this is
Mm,
why
mm,
am I doing this? Or just to remind yourself that what you do makes a difference. Because like you say, like actuarial is not like writing a book.
Mm.
When I was writing my book, I would give myself a word count that I was like, today I need to do 2,000 words. I
Okay.
need to do that, you know.
Mm.
And so by the end of the day, it was very clear to me that I had made a difference because there were
Mm.
words on a page that was previously blank. But
Mm.
with actuarial, you know, you're quantifying risk, and risk is intangible, invisible,
Mm.
you know. So reminding yourself that what you do makes a difference
Mm.
is important, and also reminding yourself that you bring a valuable contribution, because
Mm.
we can all be quite hard on ourselves too, I think, as actuaries.
I think we can. I think we can. And without that tangible output, as you say, it can be difficult to know when we're finished and when we've done our job and when we've gotten there, I guess. So, yeah. Okay. Now that's really, really useful. Okay. So thank you for sharing why it's important to be able to describe what you do and how you personally describe what you do. And then a bit of a process around looking at our activities and, refining, going through that refinement and honing process to be able to get really clear about what it is that we do and have that mission statement that we write on a post-it note or we put it on a notebook, we put it somewhere where we can see to help remind us on a day-to-day basis to stay motivated and focused and reminding us of our valuable contribution. That's so, so, so useful. So, Katrin, I'd like to finish our interview with one question, and it's this. What's one tip you'd have for actuaries wanting to better describe what they do?
I would say do the process we just described, but start with what you currently do.
Right.
So it might be that you write your mission on paper and it doesn't look like how you want it to look like. You know, maybe
Mm,
it's got too
mm,
much BAU work in it, or maybe it's not people focused enough, or
mm,
maybe it just doesn't really fit the job that you wanted to do when you took this job. I've seen that happen before. But once you've got your mission statement for what you currently do, you can always look to shape your role
mm,
once you've got a good grasp of your current job, once you're aware of the bits that you really don't like in your current job, you can look to shape it, and you can use your mission statement as a prompt um, to start the conversations, you know, maybe with your boss or your boss's boss, or just to help yourself, you know,
mm,
refocus on your own goals. And yeah, so use this as a tool for yourself and your progression and your
mm.
development. But yeah, never dread answering those "what do you do?" questions ever again.
Fantastic. So much great food for thought and some practical tips for our listeners today. Katrin, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And I look forward to having future conversations about what we do as actuaries. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Julia. Bye bye.